Alright, some terminology before we get into risk. So again, it's PMBOK terminology, and I'll talk a little bit about why that's important. So uncertainty, pretty straightforward. An undefined source of risk, or the unknown unknowns. A hazard is a source of risk. So if you saw a cable laying across the floor, potentially a trip hazard, clues in the name, that's the hazard. The risk is that you might trip over the cable. A risk is an event that might happen. A threat is a negative risk, something that might happen and would negatively impact the project. An opportunity is a positive risk, something that might happen that would positively impact the project. Now, in reality, we very rarely use the term threat, unless we're doing a really super formal risk assessment. As project managers, we are trying to stop anything bad from happening to our project. We are constantly playing defensive tactics to stop things ruining our outcomes. So usually, and in most organisations, when we talk about risks, we always talk about them as being a negative. The term threat is not something really outside of academia or, as I say, really formal risk workshops. We would generally use the terms threat and risk interchangeably. The term opportunity is used to highlight positive risk, but we very rarely talk about positive risks in the way we manage projects, because we're trying to stop the negative things from happening. Very occasionally we might talk about opportunities. An issue is a risk that has occurred. It's something that needs to be managed now. It may or may not have been a risk. Issues can come out of left field. It doesn't need to have been a risk. But if you identify something as a risk, and it happens, then that also is known as an issue. Just on the cable example, so if you have a cable that's running across the floor, the risk is that somebody might trip over it. If somebody does trip over it and hurt themselves, now you have an issue. You have to fix that now. Ideally, you fix it when it's a risk, so no one hurts themselves. But if it turns into an issue, it makes it even more urgent that it gets fixed. A treatment strategy is something that you do to respond to the risk. So in the case of the cable, it could be putting some tape down over it so nobody can trip. And a cascading risk is a risk created by a treatment strategy or issue. You may treat the cascading risk, or it could just be such a small risk that it's not worth treatment.